So it's Monday morning and it's nothing but rain. Gotta have... She's in her 70s. You can't find a better woman than that. Taking care of her chickens. And this guy's causing grief for me. I'm hiding in the garage where it's not raining. Bullseye, stop it. Hey! What are you doing? Well guys, I just remembered I have a job here to do that's a good rainy day job. I need to replace these two rollers, the infeed and outfeed rollers on my grizzly planer. So I guess I'm going to take a gander at that and see how involved this is going to be. While I work on the planer, Bullseye's going to work on rounding off all the corners on all the wood that I have in the garage. You better get started. So the first thing on this is a G1037. So the first thing you need to take off is this cover, I'm assuming. And that's where we're going to start, because you can see the most amount of things down there. This planer worked pretty well making all that molding. I must have made around 2,000 feet or better, and linear feet. And I didn't really have trouble until one of the blades on a piece of molding broke, and that caused, it went through the planer. I'm lucky that it didn't do more damage than it did do. This is just a little bit of a guide, I believe, here to hold back or divert the dust. I think you put it comes in close and kind of helps to make an air thing so that the chips fly out better. A guide for that. Now, looks like I'm going to have to take this off of here, this top, because this is a solid frame and both wheels are underneath this. Oh boy. Alright. I'll get back to you here. So the next step then is there's 4 Allen head screws on the 4 sides of this. I'm not positive whether this should be taken off or not, but it looks like that's the way it comes apart, so that's what I'm going to do. Take these 4 out first. Okay, so I took the cover off, and then I took the belts off. And once I took the belts off, this side here, you know, can come out. The other side is not coming out so easily, and that's where the drive part of this is. So you can see there's a, let me lower this down a little bit. You can see that the gears are in there. You can change gears for when you're doing molding or planing. So I'm going to take those off and see if I can get this head to come off the top of it. Okay, so I took the 2 gears off, and it looks like if I take one of these chains off here, it looks like it might come out of there. I'm not sure. I guess this one is going to this roller. Yeah, so what's happening here is the head's being turned by the belts. The belts in turn probably has a gearbox in here that turn these gears, and then they run the infeed and the outfeed roller. So I'm not quite sure yet of what's holding what here, but we'll find out in a minute. Alright, so I took this side cover off of here so that I could see in here a little bit better as to what's going on. And gotta try and figure out what's the next step here to change these rollers. So there was a little roll pin in here that holds the crank to turn the head up and down, which I had to take out. And it looks now as though this whole thing will lift off of here. It's just a matter of picking it up evenly. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do here. This thing is kind of heavy, so it feels like it doesn't necessarily want to come off, but from what I can see here, it should come off. Yeah. There it comes. Yeah. Where's your helper when you need them? This rod's giving me a little bit of grief here. I guess I should put a little bit of oil on it. Maybe it'll come up a little bit easier. I sprayed a little bit of oil on this. Feels like there's a little bit of grit on it, or if not grit, maybe just some marks from machining. I think I'll take a piece of Scotch-Brite to it. It might help to get it off easier, because it doesn't have to be real tight in the head to turn it up and down, I don't think. And we'll see if that comes off now. Like I say, this thing is kind of heavy, and it's not exactly at a low thing being on this stand and all. I think I'll put a little more, another squirt on there just to see if it comes loose. Now obviously I've never had this apart before. I don't think, there really shouldn't be a need to. I'm going to move these rollers out of the way before I drop them. But what I want to do is try and flip it over, and I'll set it on this stool that's right here, hopefully. Oh, that's a lot easier than I thought it was going to be so far. But you can see how chewed up those rollers are. I mean, those rollers took a beating. That's what they're supposed to look like. So we're going to replace those. Looks like they actually slide in some kind of a block here. I'm not sure of how the block's held in, probably from the opposite side here. We'll see what happens with that. Okay, so I have the book here that came with it. Obviously there's nothing in the book here that tells you how to take it apart. It does tell you how to adjust different things. I don't know if there's a blow up here of the machine or not for parts. I think there is somewhere. Did you see it anywhere in here, full-time? Huh? When you were reading this, did you see it? There it is. Yeah. So it looks like if you take the adjustment for the feed rollers out, that should loosen up the bar or the guides that are holding the rollers in. So we'll try and take them out next. So that would be this part here, or this part, all four of them. So what you got here is almost reminds me of a reloading die, the way it's made. but it sort of looks like a reloading die threaded. You take the lock nut off right here, and this nut that's on the top of this thread off, and then you can get this out of there. So I'm going to take this one off as well on this side, just to see if that loosens that thing up or not, because I can't tell how it's put together yet. Okay, so what we got here now is these did not have to come out, but the adjustment nut did have to come off. So now I know that. And if you look here, you can see that if you push down on these bolts, this does want to come out of there. So it'll come out. The roller will come out. Well, there's one side out. And there's a spring up in there you got to watch. But it doesn't seem to... It comes with it. The problem at the moment is trying to get this chain off of here. So... and I can't see this thing with these freaking eyes of mine. Hold in there. Alright, so what we got there, and I think you can see that there's a spring clip that has to come off. Once that one comes off, I think this will come off. Same thing with the other side. But regardless, I got to take this one spring clip off here, I believe. So I'm going to get a pair of spring clip pliers and take that off, and then that roller should come out of there without an issue. Okay guys, so I took the spring clip out, okay, as you can see there. Got these are called Job Smart. That probably means Tractor Supply. $5 for a set of these with a bunch of other stuff on them. I bought them years ago, I think. I'm not sure. But anyway, for all intents and purposes, this should come out now. I just want to make sure I video what I have here, so that in case, you know, something happens that I forget what I'm doing, or I don't get back to it for a couple of days, that I'm not going to forget what's happening here. So there's a block like this on the opposite side over here, and these bolts come down to the block. So some kind of a rubber or plastic fiber gasket on this as well. So let me just bring these down, and there are the springs I was talking about. So okay, these things, oh fantastic, came right off of there. I thought I might have problems with that. Oh, this is real easy. Okay, so there it is. And we'll take a new one and put it on there. Let me reach for a new one. So the old one went that way. I don't think there's a difference in these. Let me just check this thing out, except for the damage. No. That looks good. Some kind of, you know, this turns, so you would think that this would have some kind of a bushing in it at least. That's, don't really like that. You can see where it's a little red where it got heated here. Huh. I'm going to have to put a little grease in there. I'll put some wheel bearing grease in these blocks. That may help to prolong this thing. Yeah, not liking that. Anyway, so this goes back together fairly easy for this roller. Now the next roller, we'll take this chain. Now this chain goes that direction. And I have to take the other one off here yet. Bullseye, please. Now I have a container of wheel bearing grease that I could put in here. I don't know if you should put grease in this thing or not, just simply because of all the sawdust. Bullseye! He's over there eating one of the bird seed out of a bag. Stop it! Come here. Come on. Stay here, will you? So anyway, I don't want to put wheel bearing grease in here. The stuff I have is made by Walmart brand. I don't know how good it is. So I have some of this Ultra Slick, which is an assembly lube for engines. So this stuff is super slippery. And since this doesn't take a lot of it's not like high RPMs. I'm going to just put a little bit of this. Okay, so we had a dead battery. This is the type of batteries that go in this thing, in case you're wondering. But anyway, okay, so I put some of the slick, what the heck is this called? Ultra Slick assembly lube from Permatex. Put that inside these little bearing blocks, or I don't know, roller guide blocks, I guess they would be, and I shove them back up into place. So really taking the chain off is what's going to give me the ability to individually take these off of here. So taking the chains off would be the thing to do. Now I didn't do it on this first one, but I'm going to do it for the second one now. Or I did have to take the chain off, but I didn't do it, you know, all at one time. So I recommend that after you get the head off, then you take the chains off. Or you can even take the chains off ahead of time, but probably after the fact, because the chains sort of hold those rollers in place once you take the bolts off the top of the, or the nuts off the top of the adjustment bolts. Okay, so far so good. I'm not sure what they call these. It's an adjustment for the infeed and outfeed rollers, so I'm going to have to call this, probably it's a guide, so it would be an adjustment guide for the roller bearings, for the rollers. Okay, what you want to do is just get them in here far enough that you can actually get the head, the nut back on there. That'll hold that roller from falling out when I go to turn it around and work on the opposite side. So that's not going to go anywhere for the moment. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. So just to repeat myself, you want to get the locked nut on there so that this rod attaches to the block that holds the bearing or the roller in place. So once you have that nut in there, you don't have to worry about that roller falling out of there. In case you're wondering about my little table here, guys, this was an old stool, and from rocking back and forth on it, the stool part broke off. So what I did was I put a flat thing on here, so when I'm sitting, as you get older, you need to sit rather than kneel. So what I did was I put a piece of plywood on there and bolted it to the top of the chair, or the stool, the adjusting stool, and now that gives me a place to work, and it's the perfect height because you're sitting on a stool that's the same height, so it works pretty nice. Alright, so now we're going to have to flip this over. We've got this one in. We're going to flip it over and get that one out, and then this was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Okay guys, so I have it flipped over, and this top one here where the roller is had another one of these spring clips on it, which I took off, but the middle one here doesn't have a clip on it. What it has is this keyway that comes out. So if you take just a little bit of a screwdriver, we'll pull that keyway out of there. It's so small I can't grab a hold of it. It'll pull this little keyway out of there, or the key out of the keyway, and then there's a fiber spacer on there, or is that a metal? That's a metal spacer, and then you have this first sprocket, and then you have the second sprocket, and up here you have that sprocket. So that's the setup then for this last roller that I'm putting in. So I want to make sure I keep them so that I can remember how they go. Of course, it's great to have this video. Okay, so then it's just a matter of these rollers now should just, once I take the adjusters off the top here, the nut, I learned that, so we just have to take the nut off, and then we can pull that roller out of there. Looks like that thing threaded out of the end there. That's a different issue. Well, I'm glad that I took that apart to see that. So I have to make sure that that goes back in there into this block here all the way. I don't know how it came out. Came out. Oh, okay. There's a flat side onto this bolt here. I must have turned that at one point for something. Got to remember not to do that. The book tells you how to set these adjustments for this roller guides then, and it's important that you set them up the way that they tell you, or else you'll have problems with this thing. Yeah, I don't care for that. I'll have to fix that. Alright, so the springs then. Let me just back up here a little bit. This spring might fall out because it's not on the bolt. This one should not. Okay, so the bolts or the spring's still there. I'll just leave it set there for the moment. Alright, so this one, same thing. Basically take the blocks off. There's no spacers behind this, so that's the old one. And we'll grab the new one. Both of these rollers are made the same, so it's not like you have to order separate ones. They're both the same roller. I'm going to use some of this slick stuff. Before I go too far here, I want to get this bolt and make sure it's threaded into this rod here. I got to take I'm going to have to grab this with a vice grips to take this nut off, but I need to get this nut off of here so I can slip it back up through. Okay guys, so I put that slick stuff inside this, tightened this bolt into the block. They're both tight on both sides. And now we have the bolts to put back in. So we're going to slide them back up in. And we should be good with that. The only thing that I would think here... Oh, okay, I'm inside. Yeah, I was wondering if I was inside these casings here that have the springs, but I am. So far so good. So now what we can do here is we can put the chain back on right away. I think I'll brush these chains off with some sawdust on them, and we'll put this back together here. Just so you know guys, because of cutting the molding, and I may have had a misadjustment here myself, you know, not besides the fact that the carbide thing went through. But here's the point: read the book so you can adjust these rollers properly in there. You know, that's what's going to hold you. But what I was going to say is, if I was only planing flat boards, this might be okay yet. Although, you know, if you have a board that's cupped a little, I don't know how it would react to this thing. But just saying. So I'll probably hang on to these. I don't know if there's a place that could redo this thing. I would imagine this is some heck of a process here. I don't think this... I think it's molded on there and probably cut after the fact, the rubber. I don't know for sure. Somebody out there might know. But anyway, so let me clean these off here. And then we're going to put this back together. Hey guys, so in summing up how to take this apart and put it back together, this is what I would recommend that you do. First of all, when you have the head off of the planer and you have it sitting on your workbench, take these lock nuts off first. Okay? Once they're off, then you can turn the head over or however you want to work with it. Take the lock nuts off. That'll release the infeed and outfeed rollers to be able to be taken out of here. But before you take them out, you have to take this chain assembly apart. So these two gears here come off with these Allen screws, cap screws I think they call them. So you just take these out, okay, pull the gears off, and be careful, there's two little keys inside these both gears, so you want to make sure you get a hold of them. And then you can take the chains off, like this one here will slide off first, and then this infeed one will slide off second. Be really alert to where the spacers are, because if you look at this thing from this angle right here, you'll see that one chain set is out further than the other chain set, so you want to make sure you have them right. This whole thing, this gearbox is driven by the planer, so when the planer is running, that drives this gear, which drives everything else. So that's basically how it works. And it's not hard to do. I mean, just you got to remember all these little parts. Like for this piece here has a fiber washer, and then it has the sprocket. Down on the second one, that would be this big gear. The bigger gear here has a sprocket, then a spacer, and another sprocket. Okay, and then the bottom one here has a small spacer and a sprocket, sort of like this one. So it's not really hard. I mean, if you have some mechanical aptitude at all, you should be able to handle this, and you have the the different tools you need. So now that that's back like that, I can go ahead and put it onto the planer, and that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, so this thing is a little bit heavy. I want to make sure there's no dirt on the top of these big pins here, so you can set it on. Like I say, it's a little bit on the heavy side, but we're going to do the best we can here. So I'm going after I'm trying to go after this pin here first. Yeah. And that's it. It goes on there pretty good. You want to watch if you're holding it like this, especially on this side. If you hold it in the middle, it's not so bad, but the guard is sticking up here and it'll pinch your fingers if you're not careful. Alright, so now we're on there. All we got to do is actually tighten the cap screws down for that. There's 4 cap screws and a bigger, what is this, Allen wrench? I think it's a number 6 metric. You want to get them all started before you tighten them too tight. That's almost like with anything else. I think this thing is made pretty nice. I don't like the fact that there's, no way of putting lubrication on the bearings, but I guess it is what it is. But the thing is it would be nice if it did have it. It would be probably longer lasting. Okay, so as far as the top of this goes, you can read your manual if you have one of these. to figure out where, how to adjust these things. I'm just going to turn them down to get them close to where they should be. And then I'm going to finish putting that other side together there. For now, I'm going to leave them like that. Okay, so on this side, all it is a matter of putting this cover, here on. You have little cap screws with washers on them. See, this is why I like this, having stuff on rollers. It's easy to work with. And those rollers that are on this thing lock. So if I want to plane with it, all I got to do is lock them. Let's see what size these are. So you tighten up these bolts here then for the this main side cover, especially at the top. The tops are the ones I had off. But this one, on this side, you take the whole cover off. It's really raining out there today. I just came back to the garage after eating my dinner, and we're getting this like really good rain. It's a soaking rain though. It's not like the other day where it poured and flooded everything in a half an hour. This has been raining all day, very steady. I don't know how much rain we got, but it's actually good for the water table. Come on. And for our well. I know last year, during the summer, my neighbor came up and he didn't even use his well all the time. I guess it's not drilled deep enough, but he ran out of water last summer. I don't know, I didn't have that problem, and I live here. Now it shows you here different gears for when you want to do planing or whatever. I think that if I was going to change these gears, you want to be really careful that you grab a hold of the keys when they come out of the keyways. So it might be better to just take this whole thing off rather than just this small cover if you ever decide to just change gears. Okay, so we're all tight there, and the top is tight. Now on this side here, I had taken the belts off I didn't do it with adjusting the motor. What I did was I just ran them off the pulley, and I'm actually going to put them on that way as well. Okay. That covers on. Now, you have this little pin that goes in here for the handle. And we have this chip guard that needs to go on here. Now you adjust this chip guard according to the cutter that you have on. So basically, without reading the book to you, I believe it's a 1/6 or 1/8 of an inch off of the cutter that you want this thing. So you got to turn the cutter to the point where it's going to come closest to this, and then adjust that top to that, or I mean the chip guard to that. And then you adjust at a different setting for when you're doing planing. Right now I have this set for making crown molding. But I'll change this later on. There's a chute that goes on here that takes the chips away. I found out unless you have a heavy-duty vacuum system, which even my vacuum cleaner hooked directly to it doesn't want to pull the chips out of it too well, because what happens is it comes out of here and turns straight up on a 90. So for me, I'd rather just throw the stuff right out of here outside and pick it up. Seems like it's a lot easier if you ask me. You don't want to tighten these too tight, because if you goof up the threads, you're talking the threads to the main casting. So, you know, that would be a real pain to try to repair that. Okay, so now that we have this back together, I'm going to lower the table a little. On this one, the table moves rather than the head. Okay guys, so those infeed and outfeed rollers should be adjusted according to the wood that you're using. You don't want them too tight or it'll stress the motor, but you want just enough pressure on them that they get the work to go through. So I'm not going to really adjust them right now because I don't have work to go through there. I don't need crown molding. and that's the cutters I have on there. So I just want to see if it's going to run without any clickety clanks. I'm satisfied with that. G1037 or 1037Z. Yeah, G1037Z 13-inch planer. That's how you change the infeed and outfeed rollers. Have a good one, guys. Bye. Because of being a little forgetful as my age increases, I'm going to write a little note here. Do not run until rollers are adjusted. I'm going to leave that on top of this thing. Okay, so there we go. And Bullseye didn't even eat anything. I mean that he shouldn't. One other thing, guys, before I close here. See these little pawls hanging down here? They're anti-kickback pawls, which means that they'll grab a hold of the board because you have pressure on the roller and keep the wood from coming back at you. You got to be careful when you're working this thing. If you take the roller down too far, it's possible for these to get caught up underneath the roller and you could damage the roller, and you don't really want that. So when you're putting it back together, that's something you want to look for to make sure that these pawls are down when you have this thing on this side to put the chain and stuff back on. Okay, that's it. Bye.